welcome to Things Are Getting Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And it's basically a horror movie watch still.
Yay!
So we just wanted to see Five Nights at Freddy's, and our conclusion was...
It was excellent, the best film I've ever seen.
And not go watch Willy's Wonderland, which is the same concept, but done a lot faster and less draggy.
I can't imagine anyone would say that about a film that currently has a 25% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
It was quite funny to see that come up on Twitter. Yeah, Willy's Wonderland is outdoing Five Nights at Freddy's. But the cinema was actually pretty full, surprisingly.
Yeah, well, it's a popular game series, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I do wonder how much of it is the fan expectation of what the lore of the thing is going to be versus making a film that's entertaining. Because I only know the bits and pieces you've told me about it, and I was going, what? Who? What?
Yeah, I've played most of the games, and I think we've kind of missed the point. If it can't get a jump scare right, the film's doing something wrong.
On reflection, there were no jump scares.
Well, they tried.
Yeah, they tried. I mean, the best you've got is that weird figurine he keeps seeing.
Balloon Boy.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
But there's that running gag of he just sees it and goes, ugh! And you go, okay, where's the animatronics and the death and dismemberment?
I think looking at the cast list, I could have told you who the villain was going to be.
Yeah, you did that before you were in. You said, oh, such and such person on the cast list is going to be this part of the franchise. And you were 100% right.
I've played the games. I know stuff.
I still didn't get this whole, we're going to withhold his surname to the end of the game, because that's a game reference as well.
Yeah, it's because you don't find Mike's surname out till the end of the game.
It's not even meaningful, is it? I can't do anything with this in the actual film.
I did feel, if you played the games, it didn't make it a good film, but there were some nice little Easter eggs in there at least.
I imagine there were quite a lot of them.
It's even the little details like Bonnie moves first, because of course he does. And
at the same time, though, it still comes to heading of, we can put this up against Willy's Wonderland, and Willy's Wonderland executed the premise faster, funnier, and I understood what was going on in Willy's Wonderland.
And it was gory.
And it was gory, yes. I think there's a bit where you can tell it was filmed to be a lot more graphic than it was, and they've cut it down severely in editing.
There were bits I felt where it could be gruesome and it just cut away because we were just trying to keep it... I guess it's because Five Nights is so popular with kids, we didn't want to go all out with the R rating on it.
Yeah. At the same time, though, you've kind of got a film that's stuck in the middle, which is going to actually please no one.
Yeah, Bloody Disgusting in their review of it called it gateway horror, which I think is the best way of thinking it. It's the kind of thing you'd maybe show to your kind of 13, 14-year-old kids to get them into horror films or something like that.
So isn't horror the kind of thing you try to stop your teenage children watching? They get into it by themselves, don't they?
We always just used to go to sleepovers and watch things like Friday the 13th and things like that.
I suppose, okay, so we also watched Totally Killer, which was the comedy time travel slasher film.
It was alright. It's no Final Girls, but
it was pretty fun. I mean, I was impressed by the bluntness of the time travel. It's not even just weird accident. It's, friends building a time machine. That's how you get back to the past.
It's a daft film. I just didn't think it was as funny as Final Girls.
No, I don't think it was actually that funny, ultimately.
It was supposed to be. They were really hinging on it being Happy Death Day, I think.
It was, but it's not... I think ultimately, then, the actress isn't quite as strong as Tree in Happy Death Day. Because Happy Death Day is still the one I'm still amazed at, starring with a character you do not like at the start of that film. And she grows on you so much by the end of it, you're actually rooting for her.
Tree's great. I think it's the fact that she's a final girl in a horror movie, a recent horror movie even, and you remember her name.
Yes.
Halloween was fun. We watched lots of horror movies. On to the X-Files.
On to the X-Files, which is kind of Halloween adjacent. Sometimes.
We've got a horror-y one this week.
We do have a horror one. First, we've got to get to the funny one. So, first up, we have Unusual Suspects, directed by Kim Manners, written by Vince Gilligan, and first broadcast on the 16th of November 1997. Guest stars. Now, this got complicated, but not for the reason you think.
Well, it's obviously got the Lone Gunmen in it.
It does. So I'm putting them to one side, so we'll concentrate on the other two guest members.
Okay.
So we've got Richard Belzer, who plays Detective John Munch.
Oh, yeah.
The police officer. Right. I didn't actually like reading his Wikipedia article, because it turns out he was a frequent guest on Alex Jones's podcast.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, so, can't you people... What is it with right-wing comedians who actually quite like it, then they turn out they are right-wing and you just go off?
Oh, like the Jimmy Pesto guy from
Yeah.
Bob's Burgers. Yeah.
Exactly what I was thinking of. He's not that extreme, but he did refer to the Boston bombing as a false flag operation. So,
Oh, God.
what is with these people? Anyway, right. So, setting aside the fact he was a kind of a jerk before he died, because he is now dead, he actually has a very weird credit. So, Detective John Munch in Unusual Suspects. This is actually the same Detective John Munch he played in Homicide: Life on the Street.
Mhm.
The same John Munch as in Law and Order, as in The Beat, as in Law and Order: Trial by Jury, as in Arrested Development. That's the same character.
Oh,
As
he's
in-
supposed to still be Munch.
He's
Is he?
same much in Arrested Development, and The Wire, and 30 Rock, and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. He is the only fictional character to appear on 11 different TV shows played by the same actor.
That's actually quite neat.
Yeah, he is the same guy in every instance. That's absolutely bizarre.
Must be incredible to play someone that recognizable.
So the guy in the X-Files is the same guy on all the other TV shows. Try not to think about that means about
Yeah.
the universe of the other TV shows. Because aliens exist on Law and Order now.
I thought when he said it to me the other day that he was in Law and Order. That's what I remembered him from.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But the major one, though, is Homicide, though, because that's obviously set in Baltimore. And that's
Yeah.
where the connection actually comes in. Because, yeah, this episode is set in Baltimore. Okay. So he's also... So getting past that, he was also in Species 2, where he played the president.
Quality film. Yep.
And he turns up in Third Rock from the Sun, not as John Munch, but as someone like him. Because this appears to be his two modes of acting. The other guest star of note is Signe Coleman, who played Suzanne Medeski, of course.
Okay.
Who we will see again in a later season.
Yes. Okay, have you got a synopsis for this one then?
I do. The year is 1989. A SWAT team conducts a raid on a Baltimore warehouse. Inside, they find a naked and disconcerted Fox Mulder in a box shouting, "They're here." 3 men attempt to leave the scene and are captured. They are revealed to be the Lone Gunmen. As they sit in city jail, they begin blaming each other for their predicament they have found themselves in. Detective John Munch interrogates John Fitzgerald Byers, who tries to explain what happened. In flashback, Byers is revealed to be a public affairs officer for the FCC and attends a computer and electronics convention. He encounters and is entranced by a beautiful woman who passes his booth. While stalking her, he passes by Melvin Frohike and Richard Langley, who are both selling stolen cable television. Byers bumps into the woman, who introduces herself as Holly and claims that her daughter has been kidnapped by her ex-boyfriend who was in the Baltimore area. Holly gives Byers a piece of paper with ARPANET/White Corps written on it. Byers realizes that the words refer to the Defense Department's computer network, which she requests he hack into. Byers does as she asks and finds an encrypted file on her daughter named Suzanne Medeski. Just then, a man who Holly claims to be her boyfriend passes by Byers' booth. The audience recognizes him as Fox Mulder. Byers and Holly recruit Frohike to help them decipher the file. Both of them decide to assault Mulder, but they decide not to when he introduces himself as an FBI agent. Returning to his booth, Byers finds his FCC colleague has been arrested for the computer hacking. Frohike convinces Byers not to turn himself in and recruits Langley to help them hack into the FBI database to learn more about Holly. They discover that Holly is in fact Suzanne Medeski, who is wanted for the acts of murder, sabotage, and terrorism at a weapons facility in New Mexico. Suzanne breaks into their hotel room and admits her deception, but claims that she was scapegoated for trying to leave her job at the weapons facility. There she had been working on ogotamine, an aerosolized gas that causes anxiety and paranoia. Suzanne claims the government plans to test the gas on civilians in Baltimore. Once the Lone Gunmen have deciphered the file, they discover she was telling the truth and learn the location of the gas, and also that she has had a tracking device implanted in her tooth, which he then pulls out. The four head to a warehouse where they find the gas stored inside asthma inhalers. Mulder arrives to arrest them, but two dark-sided men came to take Suzanne. They fire at Mulder, hitting the boxes behind him and exposing him to the gas. The gas causes Mulder to strip naked and hide in the box and hallucinate about seeing aliens in the warehouse. Suzanne shoots both men and escapes. More men arrive, led by X, who intimidates the Lone Gunmen. Byers attempts to confront X, asking about his actions and mentioning the supposed cover-up of John F. Kennedy. X offers an unconvincing denial, "I heard it was a Lone Gunman," and leaves them alone just as the police arrive to arrest the Lone Gunmen. Detective Munch does not believe Byers' story, but it is soon corroborated by Mulder and the three are released from jail. After their release, they realise where Suzanne has gone and track her down. She has failed to get the local paper to believe her story and intends to continue on to other news sources. She tells the newly formed Lone Gunmen to reveal the truth to as many people as possible. She is then captured by X, who leers at the Lone Gunman as he departs with her. Later, at the convention center, the three of them meet Mulder and try to explain what happened to him.
Thank you.
So you know my big thing about Paper Hearts?
About it being in the wrong place in the series.
Yeah. Is, and much as I would want it to go into season 5, and we've discussed why that's not possible, this one is actually great to put after Redux 2, because this is very potentially where Mulder's alien belief came from.
Yeah.
Exposure to that gas in the warehouse, and he's hallucinating grey aliens wandering around. This is believably the basis for why he believes in aliens.
I know a lot of people not criticize this episode because it is a largely loved one, but did comment on the fact that you can't wholly trust it because last time the X-Files pulled this was Musings.
That's true.
The episode in which we're not sure how much of it is true.
True. I think the difference there, though, is Byers is revealed to be quite the stickler for the truth in this episode. And also, the flashback isn't that length of time. This is literally recounting the events of a day ago, isn't it? We're not getting this from present day flashing back to 1989. We're getting this as of 1989.
You've got it from the perspective of 3 conspiracy theorists who are quite paranoid and may have been exposed to a paranoia-inducing gas, however.
There is that. I did find it interesting that their whole conspiracy bent comes from one 30-second conversation with Suzanne.
Mm.
And this is the basis of all their conspiracy beliefs.
The really nice thing about the episode is the fact that the Lone Gunmen previously have just been a unit. It's like our 3 nerds, and now we're actually starting to get some kind of individual personalities for them.
Yes.
Particularly, I think Langley really benefits from this episode.
Oh, yeah. I mean, before we get into Langley, because there's some bits of Langley I really enjoy, but there's a quote from the guy who plays Byers, I think, about how they thought he was the photocopy repair guy.
Oh, I think it was Dean Haglund, Langley's
yeah.
actor, who said something to the effect of, when they read the script, they didn't consider this to be what they thought their origin would be, because they just thought they'd been, like, in a band in college or something like that.
Can you imagine those 3 in a band? Yeah, it's nice to get an actual backstory for them. And this is also one of my bits of evidence I put forward for, mistakenly it turns out, but we'll get into that when we get into it, of why a Lone Gunmen series will work. Did you watch The Unusual Suspects? Great, wasn't it? Let's do 13 episodes of that. If only they had. I like the little detail of Frohickey and Langley basically doing the same thing, but sniping at each other about why their version of the cable descrambler is superior to the other one.
After Langley's apparently burnt down someone's home one time.
But now it's been fixed, so it's not going to happen again. It's a lot of nice little details. And I love how archaic 1989 seems from 1997. Because we're talking, that's under a decade. And this, like, Mulder's giant cell phone, which they apparently deliberately found the biggest one they could, so there probably were smaller models at the time.
It's a huge Motorola, I think.
Yeah. But it's one of these things where it's hard to understand now how fast technology was advancing at that point in time, with just how clunky everything was in 1989 versus the kind of things you see in 1997.
That, interestingly, was one of the biggest criticisms I could find of this episode at the time, was people complaining how quickly and easily they can do things on the computer and internet connections of the time. Because it's like, when they pull up Mulder's file and hack the FBI database, it's instant.
Yeah.
And there's no way in hell it would have been anywhere near that. We all remember what modems were like back then.
Yeah. I think it's one of those ones where you have to give them some narrative leeway just for getting it on the screen in a plausible time frame.
The IT Crowds joke, British comedy series where they commented about pre-broadband internet speeds and it was something like up all night and you look at 7 women or something like that.
It was 3, actually.
Was it 3 women? Yeah.
Which is a fair point, but it's still fun to watch it. We have to talk about Langley, because Langley has a thing in here which I don't think I've seen in any other entertainment ever. And it's just, you're gambling on a D&D session. This is amazing. This is what people do.
To be fair, Lord Manhammer is nailing it.
And the fact he's called Lord Manhammer as well. I mean, it's not clear if he's the DM or not. I mean, it kind of looks like he is.
It looks sort of... It might just be a misunderstanding of how D&D work, but it looks kind of like a DM-less game.
Yeah, well, he's got a source book in front of him, so it's not clear if he actually is running something, but he hasn't got a screen or anything.
Yeah, no one's behind the screen.
No. I mean, you do get that. I mean, Community is one of the ones where, and I refuse to believe no one on Community knows how D&D works, but a lot of people criticize the D&D episodes of Community because what on earth is going on? Abed's rolling all the dice for everyone, which is something you can do, you just don't normally get that happening.
It used to be kind of a much older thing. I remember a day when DMs would control everything for everyone.
But not to that degree.
You don't see it these days at all.
No, so... But yeah, we're missing the point. The point of the joke is still you're gambling on a D&D game, which is hysterical.
It's Papa wants a new sword of wounding, I think the quote is.
And my kung fu is better than yours. Or my kung fu is greatest, or whatever it is.
Langley's kung fu is best.
In terms of criticism for the episodes, I really enjoyed this episode. The one thing I think is really weak is when they've hacked into the FBI and read Mulder's file, Suzanne just breaks into their room, and there's a real disconnect there of how on earth has she found that out?
Yeah, I suppose.
Because I just don't get how she found the room. I mean, it keeps everything flowing and it's nice and everything.
That sequence is supposed to reference The Wizard of Oz as well. It's the idea of the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion and all kind of trembling together behind Dorothy. It's how you get them when they all huddle in the corner because they think she's armed and dangerous.
Yeah, which is nice. I mean, it's like a bit where they say, oh, we can totally take that Agent Bolster guy. And as soon as they confront him, they just freeze up and don't know what to do.
Yeah.
There's loads of little delightful bits, and it's also notable that the only reason this episode happened was David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson were filming something quite involved that will be relevant soon-ish. So this is kind of a stopgap thing, and there was some concern whether the Lone Gunmen could carry the episode.
I'll note as well, I should have said it earlier probably, that this is actually the 100th episode to air of The X-Files. It wasn't the 100th filmed, but it was the 100th to air. And so imagine this as your kind of milestone episode.
It's quite a weird one. Yeah, one of the major actors is not in this episode at all, and the other one's barely in it.
And instead, we're focusing on the 3 fan-favourite computer geeks.
But again, it comes back to, yes, this should have been the launching point for the spin-off series. And it's incredible. It's not until after season 8 it actually happens. It's weird how long it was delayed before they actually went through with it.
I like how we kind of involved our title in this as well, because obviously we're playing off The Usual Suspects for the title, but the fact with Holly kind of taking her name off a sugar packet, we've got that kind of Kobayashi moment in there.
Yeah, and it's more subtle than you get in a lot of things, because I remember things like Peep Show, where it's like, oh, I've got Professor Kaiser Soze. Oh, McLeish, that makes more sense. But yeah, I think it's one of the it's more subtle than you get. Usual Suspects references usually very blatant with how they do it.
I guess it's because, and I won't spoil it here, but virtually everyone knows the twist of Usual Suspects. It's one of the most famous movie twists of all time.
It's true. The other flaw with the episode is not a lot actually happens. It's more watching these characters bounce off each other and watching the Lone Gunmen dynamic start to develop. Because it's interesting, they're all at their throats for different reasons. Like, Floridian and Langley are competitors. Byers is the government guy, and we don't trust the government guy at all.
I like for Byers the fact that he starts out as this kind of enthusiastic government supporter. He's very, very loyal to the FCC.
Squeaky clean, completely by the book, I can't do this, it's legal.
And essentially he meets the femme fatale, and that sends him down this kind of conspiracy theorist rabbit hole, leading to the formation of the Lone Gunmen as we know them.
Oh, sorry, that is the other thing we can talk about. Hey, it's nice to see a cameo. It's a shame his name was on the start of the episode, because he shows up so late in, and it should be a big surprise. But X, we have X back.
Yeah, I believe that this is going to be his penultimate appearance. He only makes one more appearance, which I think is in the end.
That would make the most sense for him to show up again, but it's really good to see X, and I think Vince Gilligan says something about how they were stuck on how to get everyone out of the end of the situation. Like, you've put them into the point where the cleanup crew has arrived. How are they going to survive this?
I've got to admit, I found it slightly unbelievable because X would have killed him.
Yeah, I buy X saving Mulder, because that actually ties in with X's ultimate character arcs, and that a lot of X's earlier stuff was bluster, and he has genuinely cared for Mulder for a very long time, that's nice. Why it doesn't kill the Lone Gunmen doesn't make any sense other than, if we kill them here, that's a massive continuity error for later.
Yeah.
The other weakest point, really, is it's not clear why he would spare them. other than, I don't know, because they've killed people for less than this. It's sort of,
That was my thought when it happens. And even when X has them on their knees and the gun to the back of Byers' head, is normally X wouldn't blink. He's got no reason to keep them alive.
No. I mean, the only way of looking at it is X was putting on a front the entire time. He was actually a very sort of sensitive, very empathic person who doesn't like to murder people, which, unfortunately, that kind of just doesn't gel with any of his other behavior. Like Soft Light would be the big one of he was willing to throw everyone under the bus in Soft Light.
It also goes against the conversation that First Elder had with the cancer men back in Redux, where, it's kind of the weaknesses of leaving loose ends. This is what you don't want. We need it all closed off, all neat.
Yeah.
You can't have this kind of, 3 lone gunmen wandering off.
No. And yet, yeah, they are. I mean, she's told them enough to get them going on this conspiracy bent.
I did like on the conspiracy bent as well, having Byers called John Fitzgerald Byers.
Yeah.
My parents were going to call me Bertram, but happened to be born on the day that JFK died.
Yeah, and how that's one of the linchpins of how they get involved. Because this was, I think, 2 years before the JFK film Oliver Stone, which is one of the major sort of instigators of conspiracy theory stuff.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see Lone Gunmen sort of just dismiss the JFK thing. Sort of, he was assassinated. What of it? And not the whole complicated thing of it was cigarette smoking man in a storm drain.
One way of remembering it.
That's one way of remembering it. It's not how I remember it. I still go for the one of it's actually Zapruder doing the firing. It's hilarious.
But I did like X giving them their name with the throwaway comment of, I thought that was just a lone gunman.
Yeah. It's the best explanation we're going to get for the name. I don't think we ever needed an explanation for the name, but it'll do.
Well, to be fair, they're the Lone Gunmen and they write a magazine called The Magic Bullet.
Yes. But yeah, I think ultimately we've got to treat it as just a character piece, really. It's interesting to see Mulder still in the violent crimes. Although it seems like he picks up that alien detector because he's clearly interested in this kind of area, but he's not got anywhere close to the X-Files yet.
Yeah.
And you've got to wonder if, again, this incident is why he'll get into the X-Files. Is it because the Lone Gunmen are reciting a conspiracy theory they heard about an hour or two ago?
They did have some air of credence. I mean, the tracker in her tooth is the big one.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying they're completely paranoid.
As I'd say that up to that point, you could easily disbelieve Holly's story because it just sounds crazy. But then when they find the note about her dentist on her file and she immediately goes to the bathroom and does a very clean job of yanking out a tooth, which contains a tracker in it, then you're beginning to see that this is something bigger.
Yeah. Do you want to do the bizarre error of the tooth?
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
You know, I like my medical inaccuracies. When you see Holly after the fact, and I will say, for anyone who's had a wisdom tooth removed, you know it's not that neat and clean and no swelling, no pain. But she goes into the bathroom, yanks a tooth, comes out with it, and they all inspect it. When she's doing so, she's holding a kind of damp pad on her lower jaw. That tooth has 3 roots, and only molars on the upper jaw have 3 roots. So, where did the tooth come from? Is this part of our conspiracy?
Is she an alien bounty hunter in disguise?
Or, has she had that tooth in her pocket the entire time just to deceive them? I mean, it's very clean, there's no blood or anything.
That's a good point.
It's compared to things like the scene in Saw 7, I think, where he pulls his tooth and how much blood there is there.
Yeah.
But there we go.
Again, it's an annoying thing, though, where you get to this is TV production and TV allowances versus realism, isn't it? I mean, and again, it depends on what the props team were told and how much they were really thinking about it, and if anyone had that knowledge. We need a molar. Here you are. Now put a diode into it.
In my head, it strikes me as the kind of thing that would be easy to get right. I mean, what does a lower jaw molar look like?
True, but there is a digression into how film and TV production works. It's what was actually passed on to information-wise at that point. Also, what references do they have? I mean, like, 1997, this is pre-Wikipedia days. Would you actually have to go to a medical textbook and look at what the different types of molars were to know what the precise details of a lower molar would have been versus an upper molar?
But it's really basic stuff.
I know.
This isn't like knowing some obscure medical fact. It's literally a tooth. There's probably someone on the cast who's had a lower tooth pulled and will be able to tell you what it looked like.
That's true.
I mean, I had a lower wisdom tooth pulled, and I can tell you it's got 2 roots. There we are.
We'll go for the conspiracy angle of Hawley has been lying to them the entire time. This does, of course, mean the JFK assassination doesn't mean anything. And it's interesting, and presumably a link to the future then, that while Mulder's come up with this experience believing in aliens, or possibly believing in aliens more because it was a weird experience, she doesn't say anything about aliens to them. Because that's not actually in the Lone Gunmen's remit when we see them in things like EBE.
No, they're conspiracy theorists.
Yeah. They will publish a photo of an EBE if they get one, but that's not their main goal or anything.
I guess it's if it becomes, like your Roswell, the government cover-up of alien existence.
Yeah.
Not just interest in aliens themselves or the paranormal.
Well, yeah, I think it's the whole, they wouldn't do a crop circle issue. But if you had a photo of aliens making the crop circles, yeah, that'll go on. That'll go in.
If the government covered it up. You've got to have that kind of government involvement, really, for one of the Lone Gunmen's conspiracy theories, I think. They're not like these other tabloid rags that Mulder reads with My Alien Baby on the cover.
Or Abductee magazine. I forgot to mention that was actually the same magazine in Redux too. Is the one from Demons.
That makes sense.
It does, so I think it's just what they had to hand. Do you have anything else then?
I did find in the plot that Susan, as intelligent and kind of articulate as she is, was a bit of a damsel.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole thing. Is ultimately she doesn't do much in this plot.
She does totally shoot 2 gunmen in a display of shooting which it feels a bit implausible that she could get both of them in the back that quickly without either of them reacting properly.
But at the same time, she's a scientist on the run, basically. She's highly educated, though, needs a hacker for her purposes, which is why she's come to Byers. But she doesn't do much other than your aforementioned shooting, just run away a lot.
That's true.
And at the end get kidnapped by X, and she's been disappeared like the guy had in Softlight. Basically, we're going on the basis of she's a MacGuffin for the formation of the Lone Gunmen.
Yes. And you've also made me realise the problem of, as intelligent as she is, and as motivated as she is, she's falling into the same trap that Mulder seems to fall into, of she's trying to go to the papers with this story without providing evidence.
Because she has no evidence
She
whatsoever.
has no evidence, yeah. And it's the problem of the audience knows that the details are true, but without evidence, the papers are going to say, we can't publish this unsubstantiated report.
The best would be is she could get it in one of Mulder's tabloid rags.
Yeah, and we know how well that goes. So yeah, I mean, I think that is the weakness of the episode, is that Susan's character isn't great, and as you said, I think you're right. It's because this is about the formation of the Lone Gunmen. She is the prop to make that happen, rather than someone who actually exists in the universe properly.
Got to point out as well, for somebody who does champion this episode, as you do, you've said that is the weakness of this episode about 6 times now.
Ah, that's true. I really enjoy it, but on a critical watch, there's a whole load of issues with it, admittedly.
It is a fun episode. It's a popular episode, too.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't find much negative about this one when I was dredging old reviews of The X-Files.
And I think, because I generally don't like prequels, because I've seen very few of them that don't annoy me or don't change the meaning of something fundamentally and then, kind of ruin the original intent of something.
Yeah.
And this is a prequel. I mean, it's slightly different to a lot of other prequels, but this is a prequel where how you've split the Lone Gunmen out doesn't detract from any of their previous appearances. As was noted, they were basically a Gestalt entity before. They just did whatever you needed to do. Because the one contradiction we've got here is that Byers is an FTC computer guy. In one breath and a few other things, he's done a lot of chemical analysis and DNA and biological work. And that's got to just come from some personal interest in the next 5 years. Rather than being anything that he's qualified or trained in. But it's not a frustrating prequel. This is like an actual, where did the characters come from? I don't feel it doesn't detract from any of their other appearances that you now know these new details about.
It doesn't retcon anything or anything like that.
And I also like, though, that we've taken like the laziest approach to making people look younger. It's like Mulder's hair's a bit fluffy, yeah. Byers looks exactly the same. Frohike's hair is a bit more slicked down. And Langley, I don't think they did anything to Langley. But it's the whole we're gonna coast by that. It's been like 5 years and maybe like 9 years at best. We're just gonna have to just pretend everything's fine and everyone's the same. I like that.
I think my favourite takeaway of the episode is the fact that Mulder's absolutely right. All his kind of paranoia and belief in aliens comes from the fact he was drugged in this episode.
Yes. But he doesn't remember that.
Again, it's the kind of thing that I might have considered a retcon if we hadn't just had Redux.
Yeah.
And I think with us just having Redux, that's kind of fun to put that in there.
That, again, this is my point about Paper Heart. Is this is the teasing thing you can now attribute to the X-Files to maybe question everything Mulder's ever believed in. And had that Samantha scene not happened in Redux 2, putting Paper Hearts here would be, okay, so aliens didn't exist. Samantha has to have gone somewhere for some reason. This old serial killer case actually does make a horrible degree of sense.
Yeah.
Alas. Anything else in this one?
I think we pretty much covered everything, actually. As you say,
it's a weird episode, ultimately.
It's a fun episode, but there's not much to talk about.
Yeah, again, I think it's because it's a lot of character work for 3 people who didn't have characters before, and now we've actually done it, but then that's eaten up so much of the time, there's not actually a lot of plot to go around it.
Yeah.
You've got the bare shell of something to actually sort of put them together into their group, and it doesn't feel forced or rushed. It actually feels quite organic how they actually sort of do become a unit by the end of it. But mostly it's these people didn't actually have proper characters before, now they do. We now understand where Byers, Frohike, and Langley have come from.
Which is nice. I think especially for Byers, as previously I couldn't have really described his personality.
I think you called him a robot last time.
He is a robot. But after this episode, he's not a robot anymore.
No, he actually...
You see that Byers is kind of altruistic and likes to see the best in people and stuff like that.
Well, we also make a point of, in terms of how they react to relationships, because firstly, we've got Frohike the horn dog. Frohike is still the horn dog, but now Byers has a crush on a adult human woman. Langley's asexual, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. It's like when they just get out of prison and Frohike's summary of Susan is hot but not worth it, I think.
Yeah, and that very much in keeping with the later Frohike as well.
It's comparing how he kind of views Susan versus how Byers does.
Yes. And Byers is ready to throw his entire life away for this woman. As you said, it's femme fatale. I also think it's... because it was so vague before how Mulder and the Lone Gunmen ended up on each other's orbits, is this works perfectly well as a starting point for them. When you get down to it, it's really... the Lone Gunmen's position is so weak at this stage because they know almost nothing.
Yeah.
They know there's a conspiracy and no government's involved, but any further than that, they don't know. But it works as how Mulder would come to know them and start to trust them and actually go to them for more information.
Yeah.
So that is good too. I mean, that works.
Plus they have a particular set of skills and they have a method of getting this information.
Yeah, because the computer hacking helps. And interestingly, this one does actually sort of hark back to Memento Mori quite well. When you saw Frohike and Langley were doing all the electronics work to get the doors open and them into the maternity lab.
Yeah.
And Byers is left as the face man. There's no computer hacking involved. It actually does tie together quite well with that.
Especially as we're now aware that Langley is the best hacker of the 3.
Well, he's got the best kung fu. I mean, best hacker is a debatable point.
Kung fu is best.
His kung fu is best. Oh, I think ultimately it's a really fun episode. It's actually quite slight. It doesn't tell you anything about the overall conspiracies, but it's nice to see this bunch of secondary cast who, in a long-standing thing, who were meant to be there for one episode because they were not meant to recur.
But they've always been loved. From season 1, there was merchandise like T-shirts with their faces on and things like that.
Well, again, I think it's like Morgan and Wong put them in just as extras for EBE, and then they don't appear until season 2 again, but then their appearances have ramped up from that.
And they're lovable.
And we can sort of say ahead of time as well, is that they will actually get into the film as well, so that's a great sort of vote of confidence for them as characters in the X-Files, is they will make it to the first feature film.
As well as get their own spin-off series.
As well as their own spin-off series, but... oh boy, are we going to have fun with that. Shall we detour? Haha.
Sigh. Maybe we should take a detour to Florida.
Okay. Wait, this Florida forest looks really like Vancouver.
Nope, definitely Florida. Definitely a subtropical swamp.
There's a lot of deciduous trees here.
In the subtropical swamp, yep.
There's not a lot of swamp either.
They mention the swamp several times.
They do mention the swamp, you don't see the swamp. Okay. Detour, directed by Brett Dowler, written by Frank Spotnitz, and first broadcast on the 23rd November 1997. Guest stars. We have Colleen Flynn, who played Officer Michelle Fazekas, who will show up in a later episode of The X-Files.
Okay.
She'll be in all things.
Okay, yeah.
We have Alf Humphreys, who played Michael Askoff. He was in Rumble in the Bronx.
All right.
Final Destination 2. X-Men 2.
Huh.
And last but not least, we have Anthony Rapp, who played Jeff Glazer. This is the guy with the thermal camera.
Okay.
He's best known for Rent.
Fair enough.
The film and the stage play.
Okay.
Because he's one of the original members of the cast who was then brought back for the film. He was also in Twister.
Okay.
And he's a recurring character on Star Trek Discovery.
Huh.
Would you like to give us a synopsis of Detour?
Sure. We open in the Apalachicola National Forest in Leon County, Florida. We see two men surveying the area for land development when they are attacked and killed by two unseen assailants. These beings seem to blend in really well with the natural surroundings except for their bright glowing red eyes. Later in that day, Michael Azakoff and his son Louis are hunting for opossums with their dog. They discover the surveyor's bloody jacket and Michael orders Louis to take the dog and run home. As Louis heads into the woods, he hears 2 shots fired. We cut to Mulder and Scully, who are carpooling with 2 other FBI agents, Michael Kinsley and Carla Stonecipher. They're en route to a team-building seminar. They are stopped at a roadblock by the local police, and Mulder decides to investigate. This is mostly to get out of the car, as the 2 other FBI agents are really irritating him. As Mulder and Scully venture into the woods, Mulder is first approached by the wife of Michael Azakoff, who is concerned that she's not getting any information about what happened to her husband. He then encounters Officer Michelle Fazekas, who has found conflicting evidence. She believes that it might have been a wild animal attack, although they haven't found Michael's body. There are also some strange evidence surrounding that, particularly some footprints at the scene that don't seem to make a lot of sense. Mulder, of course, decides that he's going to help out with this investigation, deeming it the perfect opportunity to get away from the seminar. Later that night, in a motel, Mulder explains to Scully that no species of animal native to North America will attack stronger prey like Michael when there is a weaker target, i.e. Louis, available. At the same time at the Azakoff residence, the dog becomes upset and begins to bark at something, so Mrs. Azakoff lets him outside. When she tries to retrieve him, the dog will not move, and she turns around to find that the door has been locked behind her from the inside. Louis hears his mother screaming and gets out of bed, but finds a dark, shadowy figure with red eyes in the hallway. Louis barely manages to escape through the dog door and runs straight into Mulder, informing him that the creature is still inside the house. The next morning, Mulder shows Scully some tracks he's found inside the house that look human, but based on the weight distribution, it shows that the assailant walks on the balls of its feet rather from heel to toe. Additionally, the fact that the creature lured Louis' mother out of the house in order to get at him tells Mulder that there is something paranormal going on here. With the help of Jeff Glazer, a local technician who owns an FLIR device, something that allows you to see heat signatures in wooded areas, Mulder, Scully and Fazekas search the woods to try and find the creature. They soon spot 2 of the creatures on the FLIR, which travel in separate directions, which causes the 4 to split up. Fazekas is attacked and disappeared. Mulder deduces that the creatures may be cryptids, might even be related to something such as the Mothman. After a brief encounter with the creatures, Glazer takes off running and is also attacked by one of them. Mulder is grabbed by another creature, although it releases him after Scully manages to wound it with her gun. Wounded and in shock after the attack, Mulder and Scully spend the night in the woods together. The next morning, Scully falls through a hole in the ground while looking for food and finds herself in a massive underground chamber where the bodies of the missing people are being stored, strung up on kind of hitching posts. As she spots a pair of red eyes in the darkness, Scully realises she's trapped with one of the creatures and does not have her firearm with her. Mulder drops down with her as the bushes behind him start rustling. The diversion gives Scully time to get her gun and she shoots the creature dead. As they examine it, they notice human-like features, but the skin of the creature is kind of patterned like the wood, which is why it blends in. They also find a wooden beam nearby with the words ad noctem, Latin for into darkness, carved on it. Mulder, Scully, Asakoff and Fazakas are all rescued, but there is no sign of Glazer or the other creature. On leaving the forest, Mulder states his belief that the creatures may in fact have been evolved versions of the first Spanish conquistadors who had settled in the forest around 450 years previously. Although, when he discusses this with Kinsley, the other FBI agent says this is ridiculous, Mulder believes that centuries of seclusion could be adequate for such drastic adaptations to happen. Mulder also realises that the creatures presume that another's presence in their territory is threatening, and therefore runs to the hotel room where Scully is packing her things. After checking on her and ascertaining that she has finished her packing, he firmly urges her to leave the room, which she does. As Mulder closes the door behind them, the camera shows under the bed where a pair of glowing eyes open.
Thank you. So, first up, this was the first episode of the X-Files you watched.
It was the first one I ever saw.
So, coming into it with Detour, what did you think of this series?
I flippin' loved this episode when I first saw it.
Cool.
And, with my taste for horror, it's got funny moments in Detour, but I'm kind of glad I came in on a horror episode because that appeals to me.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I'm not sure what your reaction would have been if you come in on Redux or Unusual Suspects.
I think a bad point by season 5 would have been to come in on a conspiracy episode. That might have put me off. Especially when you haven't got all that baggage and know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like I said last week, I had read a few of the young adult novels, so at least I'd read Pilot, X Marks the Spot. So, that was about all the introduction to the conspiracy I would have had at this point.
Okay. But you knew more or less who Mulder was, who Scully was, what their deal was. Not so much why they're going on a team-building seminar, which is in Florida, which is... Is there not one closer to Washington, guys?
That is quite a distance to go. It shows how far they will send FBI agents, I guess.
But yeah, that Floridian forest. That not Vancouver at all.
I'm sure there are plenty of evergreen forests in Florida.
Very cold. I think you actually noted they're wearing a lot of layers for Florida.
Yeah, it was my thought when you see the hunter and his kid, is the fact he's wearing at least 3 layers of clothing there. I've been to Florida in December. It's still like as hot as it is in Britain in the summer at that point.
Yeah, you're not going to be wearing that much clothing. I do feel there is an interesting difference in this episode from many other ones. Is that we have this thing as is normal, but then straight after the credits, we don't cut to Mulder and Scully immediately. We cut to Michael Asakoff and his son.
Yeah.
Which is unusual, because usually at the point with this is Mulder and Scully coming into proceedings.
It's like a second sting.
Yeah. And it's... Well, I suppose you can just have the surveyors immediately. I quite like the surveyor who's waxes lyrical about the ancient forest, even though he's helping tear it down.
Yeah.
Which is an odd choice. And why don't we start with, it was conquistadors, maybe.
Who might have found the Fountain of Youth.
Might have found the Fountain of Youth.
Because this is Pons de Leon's party, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the synopsis also made me realise is that Scully's failed to rewrite history and medical science again, because they have the dead body at the end there.
Surely they could have lifted it out when they took her out.
Yeah, and all the other people. It also felt it was a bit weird, a kind of weird happy episode of all these other people in the intro, aside from those 2 surveyors, they're fine.
And Glazer, they never find his body.
And then Glazer, yeah. But like the kid, the Asakoff family are reunited and happy. Officer Fazakas is fine. But though I'm not sure we really minded what happened to her.
Thinking of it in terms of the Empty Child episode of Doctor Who, where it ends with him saying, "This time everybody lives."
Yeah. A lot of people have taken exception to that after that, though, because it turns out that Stephen Moffat is actually terrible at killing people, is that he doesn't do it. I mean, you go like Silence in the Library is the big one of contorting things so that no one died in that episode.
A lot of writers don't like killing their characters, of course.
But hey, Sculder Shippers, this one's a good one for you.
Because of a bull prog named Jeremiah?
Yeah, we'll do that one. Yeah, we could do that one first. There's another scene I was thinking of as well.
All right, what were you thinking of?
She comes in with the wine and cheese. And Mulder even
because he's missed the wine and cheese reception.
Oh, I know, but still, I mean, I do think this is Mulder being a jerk and Scully should move on. given that she said, "Oh, I brought you wine and cheese," and Mulder bolts out the room to go and talk to the Yasakov family.
Well, he is the master psychiatrist after all.
Yeah, he's doing really well with that. But Jeremiah is a bullfrog. Everyone loves this bit. I mean, you also have Mulder not subtly coming on to Scully. It's like the best way to stay warm in a situation is to crawl into a sleeping bag with another naked person.
It's about what she'd expect by Mulder. He watches porn in the office.
He does, but that's you don't say that to anything.
He's also
other
in shock.
Yeah, but you still don't say it to a close friend.
You might when you're in shock.
You might when you're in shock, but you don't say it to a professional acquaintance. When you maybe if you're in shock, but still, that's a come on, isn't it?
Yeah. I love the bit where she sings "Joy to the World" to him, though.
Yeah, it is very cute. It's a bit odd that the conquistadors wait for her to start going foraging and then attack her when Mulder's awake rather than taking her when he's asleep.
To be fair, they don't attack her. She just falls into their warren.
I suppose so, yeah.
But you do see when she starts singing "Joy to the World" that one of them sat behind the tree near her.
Yeah.
But evidently her beautiful siren song just kept it at bay.
I do think the effect's not too bad, but it is a little bit ropey these days.
I think it looked alright at the time from what I remember.
Yeah. But the red eyes is one of those, Rah!
Apparently, originally they wanted to do it entirely as a practical effect, but it just wasn't working. So therefore they had to largely do it in post.
Yeah, which is fine. I think I like it as a horror thing, but I did find it was one of those, it's overly convenient how many times they put their hands down onto them. Because like he stabs that surveying stick into one of their legs, and that doesn't actually seem to stop them, does it?
I was thinking from the angles of some of these shots as well, because one of them literally puts his hand on the thing's face, so is it just lying kind of supine under him?
Yeah, because that's one where the other surveyor runs through the woods and jumps over the log and puts his hand down it. And it got there how?
It feels more like, it's not that it's blending in perfectly, but it's kind of fusing with the forest.
Yeah, and teleporting into places otherwise.
One of these ideas, like the villain in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure who can move through the ground.
Yeah.
You're looking at that sort of logic.
Yeah, that would have made more sense, but that's not actually what we got ultimately.
But I still love the idea of how we move through our Mulder theories, because for once Mulder has no flipping idea what these are.
No.
That we start off kind of like, oh yeah, there was that thing with red eyes in Point Pleasant. Mulder, this looks nothing like the Mothman, really. And then move on to it's Ponce de Leon's party who found the Fountain of Youth and have evolved really, really flipping fast over 400 years.
Yeah. And that's the best. We're not going to get an advancement on that theory. That's the best we've got.
I think it's possibly the best, given that it makes a comment that ad noctem on the post was something that the conquistadors put on their kind of like execution scaffolds or something like that. It said it at the end of the episode.
So it does fit in with it. Okay. I was going to say it's a shame the X-Files never did a Mothman episode. We've alluded to it a few times. We've never actually gone into it.
This is about the closest as we're going to get, I think.
But then I also thought, is there a reason why they didn't? And is that reason the Mothman Prophecies was out at this kind of time frame?
The Mothman Prophecies is a really controversial film as well because it's a bit of a cult classic, but it did atrociously at the time it came out.
But I wonder if the presence of it or the failure of it is why the X-Files never actually did the Mothman.
You bear in mind that the Mothman Prophecies basically didn't show you the Mothman at all, and that's how they got around it. There are one or two shots that might be it, and that's about as far as it goes.
But I still think this is perfect territory for the X-Files. They just do not go near it. This is one of the most famous American cryptids.
Well, to be fair, they kind of cheated the Jersey Devil as well, given that was no Jersey Devil.
No.
So we've had Jersey Devil in name only, and now we've had Mothman in name only.
But we don't even declare it the Mothman. Well, it could have been the Mothman, but then he kind of just goes on. He's just really hung up on red eyes, hasn't he?
The sightings of the Mothman tend to be large, hulking forms with glowing red eyes that move vertically upwards when startled, hence the flying like a moth or an owl.
Yeah. And to be fair, I did find the Mothman Prophecies film actually quite creepy, but...
Yeah. Swings and roundabouts. I thought the bits where they talk to it's quite creepy.
That's what I mean. That's the bits I did find creepy, talking to it on the phone in the dark.
I am injured cold.
Yeah. And then rushing over to that guy's house and the guy saying, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And having no memory of any of it.
Yeah.
That was creepy. But yeah, I do wonder if that film is why the X-Files never actually did the Mothman properly. Because it does feel like ample territory, and yeah, they sort of said, these other people have done it, and not in the best way, so we're going to steer clear of it.
Yeah. Haven't done any jackalopes either.
Tragic. We have to... I think we'll have to compile a list at the end of this when we get to the end of season 11 of
famous American cryptids we haven't touched.
And also just paranormal stuff they haven't done, either for good reason or none, because we're obviously not getting into ancient astronaut kind of stuff because they're not going near the relevant locations for it.
Mm.
And,
or antler rabbits.
Or antler rabbits. We could have wolpertingers. That would be kind of fun.
It's jackalopes in America. Wolpertingers are Bavarian.
Look, given they've gone off to Hong Kong and other places, there's no reason why we can't send Mulder on an overnight plane to Germany and force him to confront
Mulder,
wolves
where
again.
are you? I'm in Scotland, haggis hunting.
You're at Loch Ness again, aren't you? No. Maybe.
Did you know there were 2 species of haggis, Scully, but they never meet because they go in opposite directions round the mountain?
I think this is why Strange didn't work, is that our things are actually really stupid when you get down to it.
I don't know. What was that movie that came out this year with the red caps?
Oh, Unwelcome.
That's our kind of like little fey creatures in action.
I suppose that was actually quite fun in the end. It's not the film you're thinking it's going to be at all.
We have a black dog. Even our local area here has a black dog, as basically every area of the UK has its own.
Yes, but we met that one. He lived down the road from us.
Poor dog.
He was still Black Shuck, though, wasn't he?
He basically was Black Shuck. But, where I grew up, he was called Bargist. Everyone has their own black dog story.
It's true. And the alien black cat and all the rest of it.
Mm.
I kind of like, and I know they're meant to be annoying, but I kind of like the other 2 FBI agents. The other man-woman partner who are fused into a single unit by the way they games and everything.
And they're so in sync, these 2.
Yeah. And just Mulder is not capable with at all, making all these snide comments that they're just not really noticing.
I did like the black humour of how it harked back to it, because they talk about their team building exercise to make a tower of furniture. And then it's going to be the way that Mulder and Scully get out of that kind of underground thing is they're piling up the bodies to make a tower at the end.
So yeah, they did actually get their weighty experience.
Yeah.
All of it, even the wine and cheese.
It's just the resigned way that they're stacking up these corpses cracked me up at the end.
Again, it's got a lot of humour in this episode as well, despite being ostensibly a serious one.
Mm. I thought it got a nice balance, actually. It should be noted that Detour did get positive reviews at the time and is a fan favourite.
Yeah.
As we found out when we started this podcast and I asked people at the start what their high points were, a lot of people mentioned Detours. So I know it's a massively popular one with the fans for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But I think this one's one of the few episodes that does get that nice balance, is we've had ones that have been overwhelmingly funny and overwhelmingly kind of scary or grotesque, and Detours kind of finds a middle ground.
Yeah, I'd say it's also unusual with the monsters, is this one has that ambiguity as much as the Conquistadors are kind of set up as the ultimate explanation. That's all you're getting. There's no concrete evidence that these are the Conquistadors and they did find the Fountain of Youth.
Mm. Apparently that was a conscious effort to keep this episode open-ended, because I think it was Frank Spotnitz felt that made it creepier.
Yeah. I mean, you could take the implication that the Fountain of Youth has been paved over to make way for housing development already.
That's depressing.
That, or it's further in the woods and will be bulldozed over shortly.
Mm. Could be, if we're assuming these guys have evolved over time and these are the same guys and not their descendants, which I imagine that Conquistadors didn't have many women on their parties.
It seems unlikely, but you can never tell.
That we're imagining this might be like Last Crusade, and it's something that they've got to have continuous contact with, which is why they've never left the woods.
Yeah. Conquistadors and the stereo of time and weird quests just makes me think of Fountain, unfortunately. So I've got visions of what the hell was going on at the end of that film. Or the middle bit with the... No, it was the start bit there of the Conquistadors, because the middle bit was present day and the third part was the future, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And then it was all in the wrong order anyway. And he turned into the tree?
You're looking at the wrong person here. I did not understand that film.
Well, no, neither did I. Other than... No, I don't. It was a very strange film. Damn you, Aronofsky. I understand The Wrestler.
Black Swan's a brilliant film.
And Black Swan. Pie made sense.
Yeah. There are some wonderful things. I'm going to still laugh at the idea that something can adapt this thoroughly in like under 500 years.
Yeah.
Because that's not how evolution works in any way. But you've got a creature that essentially it's not invisible, but it blends in perfectly to its environment, has glowing red eyes, can evidently see perfectly well in absolute darkness, walks digigrade, like a wolf or something, on the balls of its feet. And makes... I thought at first it was insects in the forest, but I think it is making that kind of cicada sort of chittery noise as it goes.
It is. It definitely is.
And it's evidently so intimidating that every other creature in the forest falls deadly silent whenever it's near.
Which was a nice touch as well, I thought, when they sort of said there's no bird song or anything.
So let's note again, how does X-Files think evolution works?
Kind of like how Pokemon evolution works.
It's Conquistador evolves too.
Yeah, it evolved into invisible thing. It's very reminiscent of Predator, unavoidably.
Apparently Deliverance was the biggest inspiration, because again, it's vulnerable people in an isolated place in the Floridian wilderness.
Yeah. Although, having seen most of Deliverance, I gotta go, really?
Yeah, that was cited as the biggest inspiration for the episode was Deliverance.
How weird.
I would have thought that Deliverance was a bigger inspiration on Home, personally.
Yeah, and I would actually say Predator was far more of a
The creature is certainly more Predator-like, but with it not actually being invisible, we don't have to go through our ways of making the creature appear.
True, but it's also got that kind of rippling effect, though, when you sort of do see it in motion or anything. So.
I think that's just supposed to be it kind of moving across slightly different backgrounds.
Yeah.
It's not it actually being invisible.
Oh, true, but it's a very similar effect to how Predator had it. So
yeah.
It's actually surprised that Predator isn't actually listed as a part of this.
I like some of the nods as well as the kid watching the Claude Rains Invisible Man on his TV.
Yeah, that was a nice one. And then Scully immediately used that as a way to dismiss his testimony.
It's the kid's just scared himself watching a horror movie at night.
Yeah. So kudos for taste, kid. I mean, most children aren't going to be watching the old 30s films.
I struggle to follow the creature's logic as well. We've noticed it's territorial and it's going for things that have been on its territory. But it's... Why would it pick off the stronger target and the armed target first?
I was going to come... That's what I was kind of struggling towards.
And also with the mum as well, is why lure the mum out of the house? Why not just kill her?
Yeah, I think we're getting into... Again, it's problems of writing a coherent story versus a actual creature. And also the fact, though, that if these are the conquistadors, they're meant to have some high degree of sentience to be able to tell which is the stronger target. Because I don't think in animals you're constantly going for the weaker target, you're going for the most vulnerable target.
Which is why it's normally like calves and things like that.
And anything on its own is what predators prey on. They don't go for the big pack of things because you're going to get either trampled or butted away and things. So, and the conquistadors, it's the best way of referring to them, basically, are really too animalistic.
In my head, it was more treating this thing like a kind of Hound of Tyndall sort of thing of once it locks onto a target, it goes for that target.
Yeah.
Which is why it would pursue the little boy and just ignore anyone else that's getting in the way. But it just seems a weird way to operate.
Well, then also it doesn't really explain what it was doing with the mother either.
Or why it let the kid leave the forest
No.
when there's two of the things and they're blooming fast.
Yeah. I think of what's one of those, it's kind of the creepy mood piece again. When you sort of get into literalism, it sort of breaks down very fast.
It's also, are they going to keep going for the kid now? Because we know one of them's still alive, at least. Assuming there are only two of them as well.
Well, no, now it lives in Scully's motel room, and so basically it can't figure out how to open the door, so...
Except it got in there, so it must have figured out the door.
Well, yeah.
And it locked the other door. So doors are not a foreign concept for our conquistadors.
No. And I suppose that is the problem with the sting, is you know they're going to do that. At the same time, why hasn't it killed Scully? Because...
It's patient. The only maybe I could give you is the... It knows Scully's armed because she's shot and killed the other one. So therefore it's biding its time for a moment it can get her when she's not going to kill it.
I suppose so. But if you know you're kind of invisible, you just...
It's not invisible, though. It blends into the woodlands, and it's in a motel room.
Okay, but you're effectively invisible, but...
I mean, when it's in the kid's house, it's very visible.
It's true. But just wait for it to stick her head in the wardrobe, and then you just come up behind you and grab her.
Yeah, I don't think I'd grab someone with a gun from behind, either, to be honest.
Well, if it's in a holster, she's not going to be able to do much about it.
I mean, as far as we're aware, they're just people. They don't have claws or fangs or anything.
True, but they did tear that survey guy apart, so... I suppose that is the other mystery. We don't know what they look like at all. What are their fingers still just fingery?
Yeah, but as its kind of little charnel house thing still has people beaten but alive in it, it's not ripping people's throats out or something.
No, except it doesn't like surveyors. If you survey their land.
So it's not killing people like Tombs is, for example, very quickly and very viscerally.
So it does mean the two surveyors at the start are a bit of a weird red herring then. I mean, then you could go into, do they understand what the two surveyors are doing, and that they are going to survey the land and therefore deprive them of their habitat?
I guess it's how aware they are, or if they're just reacting to somebody kind of trespassing on their territory.
Yeah. I think it's a weird one where it's such an alien animal that we've no idea really how to interpret what it's doing. Because a lot of the other times we do have some vague idea of why something would do what it does.
I also felt my other criticism of the episode is how easily Mulder and Scully are found. Given that we do comment on the fact that these forests are huge and people get lost in them all the time.
Yeah.
But that search party find them, like, within a matter of hours.
Yeah, just as they needed them. That was a bit suspect.
We'd only built a corpse pile that was about waist high by the time people had come.
Yeah.
You know, I've listened to kind of missing 411 kind of stories on podcasts before, where people have kind of died because they've been, only a short distance away from roads, but not known they were there, because that's the danger of forests.
Yeah. And Fazakat actually sort of makes a big point of, if you lose sight of us, sort of just sit in place and wait for me to find you.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite explain why they then sort of bolt off in two different directions.
Yeah, when we know that this is a clever creature that does divide its prey, and we immediately run in opposite directions.
Well, the other point about that is, and you're going to have to go with its adrenaline and stuff, is that only one of you has the machine to see the invisible creatures. The other two don't have that. You're chasing down a, not invisible, but effectively invisible creature. I'm not sure what you think you're going to do at the end of this.
Yeah. I'm surprised Scully didn't look harder when Fazakas went down as well, because she just kind of disappears like someone's grabbed her ankles and yanked her into the undergrowth. But Scully just, when people come, oh no, she's vanished. It's like, did you not just walk over to where she was? At which point, presumably, you'd see the big hole.
You'd think, yeah. Or if not that, just the drag marks as she's pulled backwards through the forest.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good episode, but not without its flaws, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a bit of a silly episode, I think, is what I'd say about it. It's completely enjoyable. It's a good, fun episode, and it kind of rounds up quite nicely, I think. But it's just daft.
Yes.
I'm very glad it was my first episode, though, because this was, I thought, a good entry point to the series. Coming in on a Monster of the Week episode that was a decent Monster of the Week episode as well.
Yeah, I'm just imagining you starting with Alpha now.
Come in on something like Excelsius Day and just given up then.
Oof, yeah.
Talico.
I'm trying to think. Oh, Jersey Devil. You start with Jersey Devil.
Oh, what about Tesos Bichos?
Ooh, dear.
If that was your first episode.
This series is just a rip-off of Relic. Even less good.
But yeah, I'm very, very fond of Detour's episode. I do think it's a good one.
Cool. Anything else about Detour?
No, nothing really. I think I'd compare the episode to Quagmire, but I think it's a superior version of Quagmire.
Yeah, there's a lot similar about it. Yeah, I would agree there.
Because it has the same kind of balance between being a monster episode and being a kind of Mulder and Scully relationship development episode.
Yeah. I suppose that's the interesting thing is that you thought this episode might have been written by Vince Gilligan, which it wasn't. He did offer additional components to it, given he'd just done Unusual Suspects.
It really did feel like a Vince Gilligan episode. It was that sort of humour to it.
Yeah. So I imagine it's whatever uncredited stuff, bits and pieces he added into this episode. It's got to be things like the training course has got to be a major part of it.
Yeah, that feels like him. And maybe the bit where he's getting Scully to sing to him.
Yeah. So next week is going to possibly, it's going to be varied.
Oh, I didn't look at the episode list. What we got?
We have the Postmodern Prometheus.
Oh.
And Christmas Carol.
Oh.
Yeah. That Christmas Carol. Not the other Christmas episode, which we'll get to next season, I think.
Ah, okay. I was wondering when that one fell.
I'm pretty sure it's season 6.
Yeah, I remember both of these episodes. It's, Postmodern Prometheus. I feel that's going to be controversial.
That's going to be controversial. Well, we'll save that till we'll get through it.
Yeah, I already have much to say on that, I think, without even rewatching it. Yeah. I remember that one very well.
So we'll get to that next week. In the meantime, if you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
Alternatively, you can find us on social media. On Twitter and Tumblr, we are GetStrange42. On Mastodon, we are at GetStrange42 at universedon.com. And on Facebook, you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast. Alternatively, if you're not sick of my voice yet, I also stream 3 times a week on Twitch. My username there is adversecamber42, and it is just basically what I'm playing on the PlayStation 5, which is currently still One Piece Odyssey. If you want to catch me, I am on Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM GMT, or I'm on Saturdays at 5 PM GMT.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsargettingstrange, where we will be getting back to our Let's Play of the first X-Files game and other X-Files ephemera.
Our Patreon has 3 tiers. They're all at varying prices, but if you back us at any tier, you will have access to the Let's Play and any other special episodes which will only be available through the Patreon.
This includes the books, the comics, the other video games, trading card games, board games if you can find any, and any other X-Files bits and pieces.
Whatever we can get our hands on.
Our theme music is envisioned by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that on Compotech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember...
I heard it was a lone gunman.